Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We got a win to talk about today. The Seahawks
we do.
Finished out
fun game.
Denver Broncos 17-16 on Monday Night Football. There was a record Monday night game, most watched Monday Night Football game since 2009. Most watched week one Monday Night Football game since 2006. 19.85 million viewers across all platforms. That's a lot of folks watching this game. There were some surprises. I mean, let's just start with the big surprise. Seattle wins. Nobody was kind of giving this team a chance, including us. I mean, we were trying to be realistic. I think the odds were that Seattle was going to come up short in this game. But you know what? It's the NFL. You play the games. Certain players step up, coaching staff steps up, and the outcome is sometimes unexpected and sometimes in a good way, and that's the result in this game. I'm happy to be wrong about a player named Geno Smith. I started out being kind of supportive, early on in the offseason, and just kind of let's just see what's going on and kind of throwing my lot, behind Drew Lock, but he didn't finish out while Geno got won the starting competition there to start the regular season for the Seahawks as the starting number one quarterback, and came out and just really had kind of one of the games of his career in a head-to-head matchup against Russell Wilson, and came out on top, Keith. I mean, what can you say about Geno's game in the first half particularly? Just started on fire, 13 of 13, 160, 70 yards, something like that.
He ended up 17 out of 18 in the first half, and had the team there in a win. 17-13 at halftime. And I mean, that it's phenomenal. Like, he just played incredible.
It went beyond the stats too, Keith. Just the eye test. I mean, he was just doing it all. He had the moxie. He was running for first downs. He had the team on his back. And it was great to see. I mean, that was phenomenal.
Well, and even beyond the eye test, if you the little things, which is the reason why he won the job, even when he hadn't played all that well in the preseason. But what you could see is him come to the line, change the protections, make sure that all those little details are taken care of, read the defense. He knew what the defense was doing, but pre-snap. So he knew like where to go with the ball. He just did all those little pre-snap things just perfectly, and it made things easy. Now, the rookie offensive tackles playing out of their minds again, for most of the game. They both kind of wore down at the end, but
true.
But for most of the game, they played phenomenal, and they gave Geno like perfect pockets to throw from quite a bit. That certainly helped, but don't discredit what Geno did. Like, him ducking under that sack to step up and run, and then realize that he had Will Disley by himself, downfield. He can just lob it up to him and let him go take it in for a touchdown. Like, that's the kind of thing that happens because your eyes are downfield. You're not watching the pass rush. You're watching, you have your eyes downfield looking for your guys. And he did so many little things right. And that's why the Seahawks won. One of the reasons why the Seahawks won.
One of the reasons, and that's the great thing to talk about. It wasn't just Geno Smith. Obviously, he stood out. I mean, we can talk about Geno some more, and we will. I thought the tight ends kind of stepped up in this game, had a great game. The wide receivers, Lockett and Metcalf, were targeted several times. Metcalf came down with all of his. but not for a lot of yards. I think the tight ends really kind of showed that they could be an integral part of this offensive scheme. I thought the play calling was done really well.
Oh, the play calling
and
was
the
phenomenal.
execution on it was great. And you mentioned the blocking up front. There were some, especially in the first half. I mean, you really kind of take a look at this game in two halves. The first half was dominated, I thought, by the way that Geno Smith played and the offense, and then the defense was playing okay, giving up some big plays, a few mistakes on the back end there. Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen both had a few mistakes, but overall, I was going to say Tariq Woolen in particular, I thought looked really good in his outing. I mean, did you see how many times they just had him out there on an island, Keith? No help, no safety help over on his side of the field, and he just took on their number one wide receiver in Sutton over there, and I thought did a great job.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised they didn't give him more help, just because of how kind of raw he is as a player. But he didn't really need. I mean, he gave up one big play, and then he also had a really kind of dumb pass interference. But you know what? Those are rookie mistakes. Like he also shut down Sutton quite a bit, and that was good to see. But honestly, I was more impressed by Mike Jackson on the other side.
Yeah, it showed on the back end there that the game wasn't bigger than those guys could handle. And it was. We've got a good problem to have on the back end now. We can talk about Jamal Adams in a little bit here, but the overall secondary is in pretty good shape, and you've got a couple players that aren't even playing yet, Artie Burns and Trey Brown. When those guys come back, we're going to have a lot of choices there for all those guys. A couple other players of note on the defensive side that just played incredible. I thought Quandre Diggs had another great game, and then Nuasu played out of his mind, Keith. I couldn't believe how many times I was saying his name out loud, and he was involved in a couple of those punch out, forced fumbles to create opportunities there at the goal line. I mean, those goal line stands, those are remind you of old time Seahawk goal line stands where you just need a player to generate something there to save your team and prevent the other team from scoring. And they did that twice. And Mike Jackson, you mentioned before, had both those fumble recoveries. And that's really the turning point in the game, are the ability of the Seahawks to keep Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos outside of scoring when they were in the red zone, because they did a great job all night.
Yeah, they really did. And I think that you go back and you start looking at the stats and you're like, okay, it felt like the Seahawks were in control a little more, but man, the stats skew Denver's way. And it really comes down to those two stops, really in three stops, because there were 3 drives in a row where Denver got inside the 10, and they ended up with 3 total points from those 3 drives.
If they score those, Keith, which I mean, most occasions they're going to score those, it totally changes, kind of the perception of the game, if you will. Doesn't take anything away from Geno or anything, but it does make it makes it more of a lopsided affair in the other direction, and it takes the win out of the win column for the Seahawks. And almost, 9 out of 10 times you're going to have teams score those things. So I want to measure this a little bit, but it's hard to take away a win of this significance in your first outing of the season. Monday Night Football, Russell Wilson's in town, Geno Smith's performance, it kind of sets the tone for the team. That the team kind of rallies around wins like this and so forth. So it's a great win for the franchise and the first one out this year. But we still have a lot of things to work on.
Yeah. Like the Seahawks were giving up 10 yards per play in the first half. How you go into halftime with a lead when you're giving up a first down every play on average is difficult to understand, from that game. But the thing is that what happened was the defense gave up big play after big play. And then they got down, once Denver got down into the red zone, they got stuck. And they couldn't get into the end zone. I mean, they had one touchdown in this game, and that was the really long play to Jerry Jeudy when Kobe Bryant was in great position. That ball could have been picked. If he gets his head around a tenth of a second faster, it's probably an interception. Because he had great coverage on the play, and that's just how, that's how football is sometimes. And so
let's talk about that concern. You mentioned the overall concern about the yards per play in the first half. And you can kind of almost pinpoint exactly where that's coming from. That big play obviously is attributed to some of that, but I thought the setting of the edge, the allowing the bigger runs from them, the lack of tackling and so forth. Hopefully they can work on that. There's a lot of things that you can take away from this game that are learning opportunities, and you get the win. I mean, it's really kind of a best case scenario for Seattle. What did you think about the overall tackling performances? This to say of like Cody and Cody Barton and Brooks out of the middle linebacker positions.
Cody Barton and Brooks played well. Like both of them did. They were 1-2 in the team in tackles. Barton had 12. Brooks had 12. Barton had 10. Yeah. I thought the two of them played very good. Outside of the two of them, there was some tackling problems until Jamal Adams' injury. He was putting his shoulder into guys, but not wrapping up and having guys just bounce off of him. Diggs did that once. You saw some of the outside linebackers do that. It was not something you want to see.
Darrell Taylor in particular.
Yeah, the tackling was not great, and that is concerning. But at the same time, they got the stops when they needed to. They made the big play when they needed to. And I think that while everyone, I think, would agree that, better tackling, better discipline in terms of setting the edge and not letting these runs go outside, all these things would be better. The fact that they were able to come up with the big play when it mattered, it's what we wanted to see. But the defense the Seahawks played last night was what you and I have been asking for the last couple of years. They took chances, they blitzed, they brought people, they created pressure. And you know what? Yeah, they gave up some big plays. But by doing that, they balanced those big plays with big plays of their own. And that allowed the team to get stops and get off the field, instead of letting teams methodically walk down the field for a touchdown with 12 plays and 6 minutes off the clock.
And Diggs did have a great tackle against like Albert O at the goal line. Like we're very close, and then the very next play they forced the fumble. And so you're right. We had a big plays of our own. Riddle me this: Pro Football Focus has graded Tariq Woolen at 50.5 points overall on their scale with a 49.8 coverage grade. At the same time, they listed him as having 34 coverage snaps, 3 targets, 0 catches allowed, and allowing a 39.6 passer rating, best among rookies, 5th among all cornerbacks in the first week of NFL football. So are those things just that grade just attributed, knocked off just because of the pass interference stuff?
It's partly, and then the other part would be what they're going to claim is that, sure, Wilson only threw his way 3 times, but that doesn't mean that his guy wasn't open more than that.
Okay.
And I tend to look at those other stats. The fact that Wilson only targeted him 3 times.
And he was on an island the entire time.
Why do you suppose it was that Wilson stayed away from him? Because Sutton wasn't open. Or if he was, he didn't trust
the read.
He didn't trust that Woolen, with his speed and size and length, he couldn't make a play on the ball. So
yeah, I just thought I was just looking at him all the time on the defense because he stood out. His stature stands out, and being out there alone against Sutton, I was just like, man, dude, that's a lot of confidence coming from an NFL team when you've completed a 5-week training camp and this is your first start in the NFL and they've just literally left you alone against Russell Wilson and Sutton on the outside. I was floored. I just couldn't believe it. And he played really well considering. I mean, yeah, I gave up a couple of things, but
well, I mean, Pro Football Focus has him not giving up anything. I mean, he gave it the long pass interference. I had him giving up another big play in there where he just didn't. It was zone coverage, and he didn't carry the route far enough, and it led to a big play. They probably ended up giving that or attributing that to Diggs or Jones in the middle, but it really could have been Woolen as well. So
interesting.
kind of just depends on what you're looking at and where you're looking at it. I found that they like that, PFF, they miss a lot. They miss those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, that's we talk about this all the time, and you're absolutely right. All right. So we've talked about some players, but let's really kind of get into it. Different players, just throw some things out, offense and defense. We talked about Uchenna Nwasu already. I thought he was my player of the game, at least on defense. He was just all over the place, had a 92.7 run defense grade, best on the team by far. Let's talk about Jamal Adams. I know it's kind of a bummer to talk about this, but I just want to kind of get it out of the way. In that you and I have talked extensively about how we valued this trade and the player and the scheme, and we were kind of excited to look at him in this scheme as an opportunity for coaches to put him in the best position. Looked like he was going to have a great game. I thought they were using him fairly effectively. Comes down with that thing and a kind of an innocent looking play overall, but ended up tearing his quad away from his knee, down low, and so he's going to need basically season-ending surgery, which puts him out 3 years in a row early exit off the team, and again and again, it looks like the contract is just not going to play out well for the Seahawks. Unfortunately for the player, I feel bad for him. It's out of his control, and it's just a tough deal for everyone.
He was having a good game. He really was. They were using him well, and this is why you and I were excited, was because we have a coaching staff capable of actually using players in ways that will allow them to be successful. And when you have an athlete as dynamic as Jamal Adams and a competent coaching staff, I mean, that is a great combination. Unfortunately, what you ended up with is, whatever it was, he that on that play, he got injured and now he's out. And it is unfortunate. I do think that that may be the last time we see Jamal Adams in a Seahawk uniform.
Agreed.
Because after this year, his contract is such that they can get out from underneath it. And I very much see them doing so for the cap savings, because they're just paying him way
and a
too
roster
much
spot,
and
the roster spot's important too. We've got some nice safeties around the roster now, and you've got to be able to play the guys that are going to be able to be available for you, and Jones and what's the kid's name? Taller kid. Ryan Neal. Those guys, deserve some opportunities too, and they're going to get them at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and find another safety, maybe even bringing Marquis Blair back onto the roster.
I think Blair signed with Carolina.
Oh, okay.
So,
but somebody out there possibly to add to the pile. But talk about Michael Jackson a little bit. He started this game, kind of came in. Nobody really paid attention to him or heard about him. Big corner.
Yeah.
Had a really nice game, a couple of forced fumble recoveries, as well as a tackle for loss and a pass breakup, 4 other tackles. Looks good out there. And
he was a guy that most people didn't have making the roster when camp started. And just impressed, just continued to impress every day in practice. Went out during the preseason playing, started out with the third stringers late in games, and then did really well. So then he moved up and was playing in, the second quarter, and then he was starting, and now he's starting in week 1, in part because of the other injuries, but he just had an impressive camp. He's really come to work prepared. He's put in the work, not just physically, but in the in the film room, and he's playing great. I mean, that's an incredible find. I mean, this was a practice squad guy a year ago.
Talk to me about what you saw out of the two rookie tackles, offensive tackles, Abe Lucas and Cross.
Well, first of all, Denver's got a couple of really good outside pass rushers. Chubb coming off one side, Randy Gregory on the other. They've got some elite players there, and that is a tough spot to be for a rookie NFL tackle in their first game, let alone two rookie NFL tackles in their first game, to take on those guys. And for 3 quarters, they were pretty much perfect. I think Cross had a holding penalty or a false start or something, but other than that, they were perfect through 3 quarters. And then after that, you started to see Chubb get through a little bit, and
I didn't really
Lucas got caught holding, and
I didn't really fault Charles Cross for that as much as, well, one was really kind of Cross's fault. He just got overpowered. And the other one, I thought Gino had an opportunity maybe to step up just a little bit and just didn't. He just didn't feel it. He didn't have an opportunity to see it per se. But I also thought that schematically, when you can see that your offensive tackles are wearing down, and it was clear that was happening, that you'd provide them a little bit of tight end help or something occasionally over there, or, run the ball a little bit more. They were running the ball effectively. Rashad Penny had 12 carries for 60 yards. So he was running the ball
averaging
effectively.
5 yards per carry. And that's without his biggest run of the night, being called back because of holding.
Yeah. So I was a little surprised they didn't lean on that a little bit more with the lead. I know that the lead wasn't huge, but they kind of continued to go out and press forward with the passing game that just ended up not being there like it was in the first half. So I thought running the ball may have helped those tackles out a little bit. But overall, I mean, you have to be impressed, especially Abe Lucas, the guy that's a 3rd round pick coming in there playing just extremely well and had a great pass run game in this game. Looked the part. I was just, I can't even believe the pockets that were created for Geno Smith. I mean, you mentioned the fact that he went 13 for 13 to start the game and 17 for 18 overall in the first half. That's offensive line for you right there. I mean, that is giving your quarterback an opportunity to be successful and converting 3rd downs and all the things. It was just a great performance, I thought, overall.
Agreed. And I mean, and that's with I think overall the entire offensive line needs credit, because Geno didn't get touched, in the first half for the most part. I mean, there was like on the touchdown to Disley, he had to, step underneath the sack. And
that was an amazing play. I mean, that was really an amazing play.
But overall, like, he was clean throughout the entire first half. And that says a lot about this offensive line, just all across. Like, Haynes making the start at left guard. He was, not the starter, Damian Lewis is, but he stepped up and played well. And Blythe in the middle was everything as advertised.
I agree.
And
didn't see a lot of him in the preseason, but boy, he was ready to play.
Yeah. In fact, okay, those words right there. I think we have missed something by not mentioning that Pete Carroll had his team ready to go in this game. They were not just fired up and whatever, they were prepared. Their game plans were on point. The Seahawks didn't commit many penalties. Like, everything was in place, which is why they won.
12 penalties.
Yeah. I mean, this was an extremely well prepared football team. And I think that Pete Carroll and his staff need to be given credit for that, because it hasn't always been the case with, some of the games for him and his coaching staffs. But in this one, they were more prepared than Denver. Clearly.
We were talking about that last show when we were talking about the pregame. I was like, what was more, we were talking about, Russell Wilson or whatever. And I said, what's most concerning with me, if I'm Denver, is I've got a rookie head coach, and I've got a rookie offensive coordinator, and I've got a rookie defensive coordinator, and it's going to take some time. And sure enough, I just thought that they were outcoached game plan wise. And then, of course, at the end of the game there with the field goal choice at the end on the 4th and 5 with, under a minute to go, but plenty of time for Russell Wilson, you've got your $250 or $250 million man on the sidelines, and you bring out your kicker to attempt a 64-yard field goal, which
would have been the second longest field goal in NFL history if he'd made it. And of course he didn't. One of the reasons Wilson wanted to leave, and one of the reasons why he left was because he felt that Pete Carroll took the ball out of his hands too much, didn't give him the opportunity to make those plays. And what does his new coach do in his first game?
Takes the ball out of his hands. And gives it to the kicker.
Wow. Right now, I'm sure there's plenty of explanations. The truth is, Seattle's defense was all over Russell Wilson in this game. And when you got one play,
I liked our chances in that situation. I didn't feel any anxiety that Russell Wilson was going to get the ball and take over and score. I mean, there was some of that. And if it would have happened, and we kind of talked about this right before the show, that if they had scored, what difference would it make? I mean, we would have had the win, or not had the win, had the loss, but it kind of wouldn't have affected the way that you felt about what the Seahawks were able to do.
The team had played well. They had exceeded expectations, and the game was super entertaining. So if Wilson does Russell Wilson things and leads them on a last-second drive to kick a field goal and win, I'd be like, okay. But you know what? They did so much better than I expected them to. So I wouldn't have been like upset about it. This is better than that because it's a win, and wins are always better. But I just didn't get. They had that. It was going to be 4th and 5, and they just let the clock tick all the way down before calling that timeout and bringing for a 40 or a 64-yard field goal.
Yeah, even a 54 yards, not a gimme. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but you're right. But it's a 64-yarder. Get up there, let your franchise quarterback win you the game, because you either
or get you closer.
Yeah, because you're either going to at that point make it and then call another timeout, or you're not, and the game is over.
Russell Wilson had a career completion percentage of 54.5% on 4th and longer than 5 in his career, and 60 some odd percent in the fourth quarter on 4th down in general. And then the kicking wise, he had less than a 3% chance to make that kick.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's kind of nuts. It's just not being prepared as a coach to make that decision. They just have not gone through that scenario.
On third down, the Broncos were over 50% on 3rd down. Wilson was playing well on 3rd downs. He was, connecting. He was, and it wasn't just like he was completing passes, but they were short of the sticks. Like he was doing the stuff that you want your quarterback to do. And they had gotten themselves kind of behind the sticks. And so, it was 4th and 5, but you still have that 4th down. I really don't get that decision by Denver staff.
Yeah. Well, they'll certainly learn from it, I would think.
God,
so let me ask you this. You talked about the preparedness of Pete Carroll and the coaching staff on the Seattle side, on both sides, offense and defense. How much of the performance that we saw can be attributed to that, and can it carry over into the season? Are there things out of this game that you saw that you weren't maybe expecting, or they executed better than you thought that they would at this point, that gives you some semblance of an idea that this could be something that could carry forward out of this game and into the San Francisco game in particular, but throughout the season? Can Geno Smith duplicate this sort of performance week in, week out?
You're asking a lot out of Geno Smith to duplicate. And the thing is that Geno Smith's performance was fantastic in the first half, and in the second half was really pedestrian. And maybe that was more conservative play calling because they had the lead. I doubt that, because Denver kept driving to the goal line over and over again and coming up short. I mean, extra, like, more points would have definitely helped, Seattle's defense out. But it was harder. And, when things got a little messy in the pocket, he couldn't do anything with it. Ultimately, it comes down to,
did we win this game, Keith, or did Denver not win this game?
Both. Those defensive plays at the goal line, you cannot take those away from Seattle's defenders and say Denver lost it. Because those were fantastic plays. Their ability to get those stops.
Reminiscent of old Thomas days.
Yeah.
Where he punched the ball out in Cam Chancellor's show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
and Cliff Averill and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
they just make stuff happen at the goal line,
I think that when you look at that and you look at this, I don't want to take anything away from Seattle's defenders. They deserve credit for this. That is a good football team that Seattle.
That is a skill that was displayed. That wasn't luck. That was purposeful. You go look at the film on those replays, and that ball's punched out.
Yeah.
So,
and even when what is
it? But the thin line between getting punched out and recovering the fumble and stopping somebody on that goal line twice or three times in the red zone or whatever it is. And or having Denver score and having the game being completely, lopsided in the other direction that's football, though. It's one of those deals. But at the same time, should fans be now expecting more from the Seahawks? Should expectations go up?
I don't think so, because you can't expect your opponent to fumble the ball twice at the goal line. If they get in,
but once, you just said that we caused it. We were responsible for that. Our defense came through.
I think that you need to, even if the defense comes up big in those spots, it doesn't mean it's fumble luck is luck. Because when you get the ball out, and that getting the ball out is a skill, the non-round football bounces in whatever way it wants to. And the fact that it bounced to a Seahawk player is fortunate. It didn't have to. A rotation could have been 17 degrees further, and then it would have bounced to a Denver player.
Or Diggs, allows 7 more inches on that.
On the previous play.
On the previous play to Albert O for a touchdown. Don't even have to run the ball. So yeah, I just, things like that fascinate me, because I want to know what we're seeing on the field can move forward. I think that, what at the end of the day, when Pete Carroll, is in meetings today and they're reviewing game film and they're trying to figure out what's going to go on at the 49ers this coming Sunday, what can they take out of this and think that they're going to be able to do again?
Well, I think that, because Denver and San Francisco run a fairly similar offense. And so a lot of what worked in the second half, when the defense stopped giving up big chunk plays, for the most part, they can carry over. And a lot of what they did, like I said, I want to say, give the Seahawks defense credit for those stops, but don't necessarily expect them next week. You've got to do more earlier in drives. And I think there's learning to be done for this team, and they'll be able to do that. I'm confident that this defense is going to continue to be good. My concern is still the offense. I think Geno was great in the first half, but he was not in the second half. And he's a guy that San Francisco is watching the tape and going, okay, what did Denver do in the second half? What adjustments did they make that shut down Geno Smith and the offense?
They generated more pressure.
Yeah. And so they're going to come they're going to attack Seattle's offense in the way that Denver did in the second half. And, it'll be up to Gino and company and the coaches to adapt to that. We've seen Gino, we've seen him, throughout his career. He's not a guy that he's not a franchise quarterback. He's not Russell Wilson. And so the team has to do what it needs to do to put him in a position to be successful, because he's not going to make those things happen himself. And I don't know if that is sustainable week in, week out, especially as there's more and more film on what Seattle wants to do offensively.
I will say this. Hats off to Geno Smith.
Absolutely. He had a fantastic first half.
Being that long out of the league as a starter, coming back, having the opportunity in front of him, and then going out and executing and just doing it in the way that he did. He had that confidence thing going, the bravado. He was trucking people when he had the opportunity to pick up first downs, and instead of going straight out of bounds, he was fighting for that extra yard. He was showing his team that he was going to fight for them. And to me, that's the biggest takeaway out of this game for Geno, is that team is going to rally around that player. And you never know. NFL is just weird, Keith. It's just one of those deals. The guy can have career stats up the yin-yang for, but that's yesterday. How is he approaching this opportunity under this situation with this offensive coordinator and head coach? And it just might be aligned for him. I don't know that we're going to see anything better per se, like his stat line, game in, game out. But I think he's giving the team opportunities to win in different ways. You've got the rushing game, and we've got the defense, and you combine that with slightly above average, and I'm talking like 15th to 20th best quarterback in the NFL. If you can be in that pocket range, Geno Smith, you're giving your team opportunities to win. Anything can happen in the NFL. I'm just curious how much of this can be carried forward with him.
If he's playing as somewhere between the 15th and 20th best quarterback in the NFL, then he is giving the team a chance to win, as long as the defense continues to turn the ball over. What we were expecting coming in, having what we'd seen in the preseason and quite frankly the rest of Geno Smith's career, is for him to be the 30th to 32nd, somewhere in that range, best quarterback in the NFL, as in, one of the bottom. And he wasn't that in this game, especially not in the first half. Although I'm looking at stats here, and what do you think his yards per a pass attempt were?
I'll be honest. I'm going to say like 12, 14, something like that. He threw the ball down the field quite a bit. No. So less than 8? Really? That surprises me. Just given the fact that the Disley throw and a few of the other ones, he had Lockett, down the field for a little bit. Didn't throw a lot of screens. Everything that he was attempting, I thought was a little longer than that. But at the same time, he had 7 receptions with Metcalf for like 30 yards or something like that, and Lockett the same. So
yards per pass attempt, 5.9.
That just doesn't seem to add up in my brain to me, but that is what it is, right?
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, no, that can't be right. But he only had 195 yards passing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
and they only finished with 250 yards net offense.
Mm-hmm.
And they finished the game with fumble, punt, end of game. I mean, that was the drives in the second half, Keith. They had 4 drives.
Yeah.
Fumble, punt, end of game. So all of that was in the first half, really.
Yeah, and in the and the reason why they won is because you look at Denver's possessions, right? Fumble, field goal, missed field goal. Those same 4.
Yeah.
And those 2 fumbles were inside the 1.
Yeah. Wow. So, we won. Let's celebrate that. I don't want to get too caught up
Absolutely.
in the ideas of,
Yep.
but this is it's exciting. It is. So, is there anybody that we left on the table that you would want to talk about at all? We saw Marquis Goodwin for the first time. What else? We saw Noah Fant kind of catch a couple balls.
Colby Parkinson.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have been waiting for how many years for that potential to finally show up on the field, and it freaking showed up on the field.
Yeah, it did. And
He had
Geno threw a
couple of
perfect ball to him.
couple of big catches, including the touchdown.
Yeah, that touchdown was marvelous. That was great. That was
great
really
throw, but it was a great route before the throw.
Yeah.
So, we've been waiting for him, and he finally showed up. I'm glad to see it. Both the touchdowns were to tight ends, which I think is, it's interesting because we were right. That was the whole thing with Shane Waldron, was he wanted to get the tight ends more involved. But one of Wilson's weaknesses as a quarterback is he doesn't throw the ball over the middle as well as you'd hope, and therefore he has a harder time getting the ball to tight ends than other quarterbacks do. And so we were hoping that, okay, they moved on from Wilson, and they're going to have a significantly weaker quarterback in terms of overall stats and whatnot, but the tight ends should have improved production, and they did. Including both touchdowns.
I thought Al Wood had a good game. Al Woods. That's about it. I mean, Carson Tinker. Might as well mention him because we probably won't mention him again. Tyler Rott's probably going to be back for this game, but Carson Tinker came in and did an okay job in the long snapper role for the week. So,
yeah. Okay. And since we're on the long, like you and I, because of Seattle's past where they had a really bad one and stuff, we always have that kind of watch on. Look at what happened in Cincinnati this week. I mean,
I have no idea what happened.
So they had a -5 turnover differential. Joe Burrow had 5 turnovers,
and that went to overtime.
And it went to overtime.
Wow.
And the only reason why it went to overtime was because when Burrow did drive him down and get him that touchdown, which they thought was going to take the lead with no time left, the extra point got blocked because their long snapper had gotten hurt earlier in the game. And so someone was trying to fill in, and the snap was high, and it took him a little bit longer to get down, and that caused it to be blocked. And then they had a chance to win in overtime with a field goal, and the snap was high, and the punter really struggled to get the ball down, and the kick was just shanked way left because it's hard to kick a moving target. Long snappers, as much as we will joke that about their usefulness,
I think it's a great way to make a living, to be completely honest with you.
Oh yeah,
right.
Agreed. I just think Seattle lost their long snapper because of an injury. He should be back soon. But the guy they brought in to replace him got the job done. Yeah. And if the guy that was doing the job had got the job done in Cincinnati, the Bengals would have won that game despite 5 turnovers by their quarterback.
Wow. Crazy. Love the NFL. All right. So we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to do another show on, middle of the week stuff, where we talk about everything in Seahawks football, players of the week, what we liked, what we're looking forward to. And then we're going to come back and preview the 49er game. Keith and I are actually going to be able to watch that game in person. I'm heading up to the Northwest. So I'll see you.
Well, in person together, not in person while we're like in the stadium. We will not be.
That's true. We're not going to Santa Clara.
We will be in Santa Clara for the game, but we will be, sitting on the couch together, drinking a beverage and enjoying some football.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. So, all right, let's get out of here. Enjoy the win. enjoy the win all week, because who knows? It's just so, I just want to believe you come out of a game like that and you're just kind of reevaluating a little bit. And I don't want to get too ahead, far over my skis on this stuff, but I'm a little bit.
Enjoy the win, but don't change
Yes.
your expectations yet.
It's so hard, Keith.
If you a 1-point victory, given everything that happened in that particular, don't change your expectations yet, because it's the same team. Like, give them a chance, because you get your expectations up and then you get disappointed when they actually live up to the original expectations. So
I did say in the prediction show, I said that we'd have a chance. We had a chance to beat Denver. I put it down as a loss, but I was thinking that maybe we could come through, and we did. And I don't know if it changes now my overall outlook. I still think that we're maybe, instead of 5 wins, maybe we get to 6. I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWCHawk. You know where the show's at. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube, and hit that subscribe button. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.